Some nights stay with you forever. The smell of rain mixing with blood. The sound of a woman's voice, shaking on the other end of the phone, cut off before she could finish her sentence. I've worked on 100 cases, but only a few make the city feel darker. And the night Kenny Bunn walked into my life was one of them. The rain had a way of making the city feel smaller, the streets tighter, as if they were folding in on themselves. My phone rang at 2:17 a.m., the sound sharp enough to cut through the heaviness of sleep. The dispatcher's voice was clipped professional, but I could hear the strain beneath it. "Detective Hayes, we've got a homicide. Suspect in custody, Kenny Bunn." I was already pulling on my coat before she finished. The apartment complex looked like a crime waiting to happen. Peeling paint, broken streetlights, the kind of place where people minded their own business for survival. But that night, the sidewalks were lined with curious faces pressed to rain-streaked windows. Blue and red lights bounced off every puddle, flashing against the yellow of police tape. Inside, 29-year-old Angela Morris lay on her kitchen floor, her life pooling out around her in deep crimson. The knife, its handle slick with blood, rested inches from her limp fingers. Kenny Bunn, her boyfriend, sat in the hallway, eyes glassy, shirt stained, hands trembling like a man who had just met the devil and wasn't sure if it was him. The air inside Angela's apartment smelled of copper and broken promises. Overturned chairs littered the living room. A wine glass lay shattered, its shards catching the light like tiny daggers. The forensics team moved with quiet precision, dusting for prints, photographing every surface, bagging the kitchen knife. Kenny's fingerprints were on the blade. Blood spatter marked his jeans like a map to violence. His hands had small cuts, the kind that come from grabbing a sharp object in a moment of rage. Neighbors had heard the fight, a woman scream, then a silence that felt heavier than the storm outside. Mrs. Ramirez from across the hall spoke to me through her chain-locked door. "Detective, they argued before, but this time it was different." I heard her voice. She was scared, real scared. It was enough to build a case. But I wanted more than a case. I wanted the truth. The interrogation room is a strange theater. 2 chairs, 1 table. For walls that feel like they're closing in. Kenny sat across from me, arms crossed, jaw locked. He looked me dead in the eye, as if dare me to try. "Kenny, you know why you're here. Tell me what happened tonight." I didn't do anything. Angela was alive when I left. "You're wasting your time," he replied, his voice smooth but his fingers restless. I slid a folder across the table. Crime scene photos spilled out like accusations. The knife, his bloody shirt, Angela's lifeless eyes staring from a place beyond pain. His gaze faltered just for a heartbeat, but I caught it. "Your prints are on the knife. Witnesses heard you fighting. Want to try again?" That was the first crack in the armor. I've learned to listen for cracks. Interrogations aren't sprints. They're marathons. Hours passed. The clock's ticking was the only applause in the room. Kenny's story shifted like a cheap alibi. First he was with friends, then alone, then asleep. The forensics report landed like a hammer. Blood spatter analysis put him in the kitchen at the exact moment Angela died. Her phone record showed a desperate call to 911, cut short mid-sentence. I pressed play. Angela's voice filled the room, frantic, trembling. "Please, he's..." Then nothing. The line went dead. Kenny stared at the table, his jaw tightening, his leg bouncing under the weight of the truth. "Turn it off. Please. Just turn it off," he muttered. The cracks were widening. By 3 a.m., the swagger was gone. Kenny's shoulders sagged, his hands shook. Sweat beaded along his hairline. "Kenny, it's over. Tell me what happened," I said, leaning forward. His voice cracked. We argued. She said she was leaving. I lost it. I didn't mean to. I grabbed the knife. I don't remember. The confession tumbled out in sobs, each word heavier than the last. The mask had fallen away, leaving only a man staring at the wreckage he created. And in that moment, I knew Angela's voice had done what my questions couldn't. It had reached him. The trial was a slow bleed. Cameras flashed, headlines screamed, and Angela's family sat in the front row, their grief visible in every tear that went unshed. Kenny Bunn was convicted of second-degree murder. 25 years to life. Some call that justice. I'm not so sure. People think the hardest part of my job is catching the killer. It's not. It's sitting across from someone who believes they can outthink the truth, watching their confidence unravel piece by piece, knowing that for the victim's family, closure is just a word. People think justice is about verdicts and prison bars. But I've learned something they don't tell you in the academy. There's no sentence long enough to bring back the dead, and no confession deep enough to erase the sound of their last breath. Kenny Bunn will spend the rest of his life behind walls. But Angela Morris, her story ends in that kitchen. And mine begins every time I remember her voice.
Like and subscribe.